The phone hit the floor before he could grab it. He snatched it up. The voice on the other end was already mid-sentence, gasping, barely coherent. "Come home," she said. "Right now. She'll destroy everything." No name, no explanation, nothing else. He was out the door in 30 seconds. 11 minutes. 2 red lights pushed through. When he turned onto his street, his front door was standing wide open. Not the way you leave a door open on a warm afternoon. Open the way a door gets left when something has already gone wrong inside. That was when Bruce Lee slowed down and started paying attention. He stepped through the threshold carefully. Standing in the center of his living room was a woman he recognized. Something was in her hand. Her face looked like nothing he had seen before. What was she about to do? Stay with me on this one. The year was 1971. Bruce Lee was 30 years old. And if you had run into him on any given morning, you would have found him exactly where you'd expect. In the backyard. Moving. Always moving. He had the speed. People had clocked it. He could move from a standing position to a full strike in 0.05 of a second. Your eye couldn't follow it. The camera could barely follow it. He wasn't training to show off. He was refining something that mattered to him deeply. The idea that a human being, given enough discipline, could become something close to perfect. But here's the thing most people miss about Bruce Lee. He wasn't just building a fighter. He was building a life. He and Linda had been married for 8 years. They had a son, Brandon, who was almost 5. Their home in Culver City was modest by Hollywood standards. But it was theirs. Linda had made it that way. She kept it warm. She kept it grounded. In a world where Bruce was always performing, always proving himself, home was the one place he didn't have to be anything except a husband and a father. He had help in the house. A woman who had been with the family for nearly 2 years. Sharp, dependable, not easily rattled. Her name was Rosa. She had seen things in that house. She had seen Bruce training at midnight. She had seen him take a career-changing call from a studio and then walk back into the kitchen to make himself a sandwich without saying a word. She didn't rattle easy. So when Rosa rattled, it meant something. The world Bruce was navigating in 1971 was not simple. He had just wrapped The Big Boss in Hong Kong, a production that had been grueling and transformative. The film would make him a star in Asia. He could feel it. But Hollywood still wasn't sure what to do with him. He had been passed over for the lead in Kung Fu, a television series built on the exact concept he had pitched himself. The studio had chosen a white actor instead. He didn't collapse over it. He kept working. But here's what that kind of pressure does to a man, even a man like Bruce Lee. It sharpens you in some places and leaves you raw in others. He was fiercely protective of what mattered. His family was the center of everything. Linda wasn't just his wife. She was the person who had believed in him before anyone else did. When he was a young Chinese-American kid in Seattle with nothing but ideas and a body he was still learning to use, she had stayed. That meant everything to him. He wasn't paranoid by nature. Fame hadn't yet hit the level where strangers regularly came looking for him at home. In Hong Kong, he was already being recognized on the street. In Los Angeles, he was still largely anonymous outside of certain circles. But there had been students, dozens of them over the years, men and women who had trained with him personally and had come away changed in ways that were sometimes hard to predict. Most of them were grateful. A few sent gifts. One had named his firstborn after him. And occasionally, very occasionally, someone became attached in a way that crossed a line. Bruce was aware of this. Linda was too, though they rarely spoke about it directly. It was the shadow side of that kind of intensity. When you give people that much of yourself in a training room, some of them don't know how to step back out. Rosa had a standing instruction. Nobody comes into this house uninvited. Nobody. She had followed that instruction every single day for nearly 2 years. Until that Tuesday. Here's what Rosa told him afterward. Here's what happened before he arrived. The knock came at 2:20. Rosa was finishing the lunch dishes. Linda was upstairs with Brandon, who had just gone down for a nap. The house was quiet in the way it gets quiet in the early afternoon. Rosa answered the door. The woman standing on the porch was in her late 20s. Dark hair, well-dressed, Not disheveled, not wild-eyed. She introduced herself with a name. Vivian. Said she was an old student of Bruce's. Said she had something to pass along personally. A letter, she said. Rosa told her Bruce wasn't home. She could leave the letter. The woman said she'd rather wait. Rosa said that wasn't possible. The woman said, "Please, it won't take long. I'll just sit in the living room. 5 minutes." This was the moment. The small, ordinary moment where the wrong call got made. Rosa stepped back from the doorway to check with Mrs. Lee first. Just a half step, barely anything. And the woman walked in. Not pushed in. Not forced. Just walked in the way you walk into a room you've already decided is yours. By the time Rosa processed what had happened, the woman was standing in the middle of the living room. Linda came downstairs a few minutes later, heard voices, and found Rosa and the woman facing each other across the coffee table. Linda was calm. She was always calm. She introduced herself and asked politely who the woman was and what she wanted. The woman opened her bag. She took out a folder. Inside were photographs. She set them on the table. "These are from a few years ago," she said. "Before you were living here. Before all of this. I think you should look at them." Linda didn't move to pick them up. "Whatever those are," Linda said, "you should leave." "I loved him," the woman said. Just like that. Not angry. Not crying. Flat, matter of fact, the way you say something you've rehearsed until the feeling has drained out of it. "I loved him and he knew it. And then he just stopped. I'm not going to disappear quietly." Rosa was already moving toward the phone. The woman saw her. "Don't do that." Her voice changed. Not a scream. Just lower. Just harder. "If you call anyone, this gets worse for everyone." She reached back into the bag. What she pulled out this time was a second folder. Thicker. She set it next to the first. "There are letters in there," she said. "Letters he wrote to me. I have recordings. I have enough to make his career disappear, and I will use all of it if I have to." Linda Lee was 31 years old. She had moved countries for this man. She had believed in him through years that would have broken someone less certain. She looked at the woman across her coffee table and she did not blink. "I don't believe you," Linda said. "And even if I did, it wouldn't change anything. You need to leave this house." The woman sat down. Just sat down on the sofa. Placed the folders in her lap. And went quiet. Nobody moved. Rosa had her hand near the phone but hadn't picked it up yet. The woman was staring at something in the middle distance. Breathing slowly. Her shoulders were drawn up tight. Then, after a long moment, they dropped. Some of the tension went out of her face. She pressed the folders to her chest and closed her eyes. "I just want to talk to him," she said. Her voice had changed again. Smaller now, like something had let go. "That's all I want. I just want him to hear me." Rosa looked at Linda. Linda gave the smallest nod. Rosa picked up the phone and dialed. Watching the woman sit there, quiet, folders in her lap, eyes closed. It looked like the worst of it was over. Like she had made her stand, lost her nerve, and was ready to back down. Rosa exhaled. She almost believed it. Bruce Lee pushed the front door open and walked into his house. The woman on the sofa opened her eyes and stood up. That was it. That was the trigger. 1 second sitting quietly, hands in her lap, looking like someone who had decided to give up. The next second she was on her feet, and everything about the room changed. She reached into the bag at her feet. Rosa saw it first. She stepped back. Linda, standing near the kitchen doorway, went still. What the woman pulled out was not the folders. It was a knife. Small, a kitchen knife, the kind that fits in a large purse if you take it from the right drawer. She held it at her side. Not raised. Not pointing at anyone. Just held it there, visible, so everyone in the room understood what the conversation was now about. "I just want to talk," she said. To Bruce. Only to Bruce. As if Linda and Rosa had ceased to exist. Bruce Lee did not move toward her. This is what people misunderstand about trained fighters in real situations. They don't charge in. They stop. They read. In the time it took him to take in the room, the knife, Linda's position, Rosa near the wall, the woman's grip, her stance, where her eyes were pointed. He had already run the scenario a dozen different ways. He stayed by the door. "All right," he said. "Talk." His voice was completely flat. Not warm. Not cold. Flat, the way a surface is flat when there's nothing on it. Linda said later that was the moment she knew everything was going to be okay. Not because she wasn't scared. She was. But she had heard that voice before in hard moments. And she knew what it meant. It meant he was in full control of himself. And when Bruce Lee was in full control of himself, he was harder to move than a wall. "I tried to reach you for 2 years," the woman said. "Letters. Phone calls. I came to the studio once and they wouldn't let me through. I just..." She stopped. Her jaw tightened. "I didn't know what else to do." "So you came to my house," Bruce said. "Yes. With a knife." She looked down at it, like she'd almost forgotten. "I didn't plan this part," she said. "No," he said. "I don't think you did." He took one step into the room. Slow. Deliberate. No threat in the movement, but no retreat either. "Linda." He didn't look at her. "Take Brandon upstairs. Rosa, go with her." Linda crossed the room, touched his arm once as she passed, and went up the stairs. Rosa followed. Their footsteps, and then silence. Just the two of them now. The woman's grip on the knife hadn't changed. She was watching him the way people watch something they're not sure is going to hurt them. "You can put that down," he said. "Not yet." "Okay." He crossed to the armchair opposite the sofa and sat down. Leaned back, arms on the armrests. Everything about his posture said, "I have nowhere else to be." If you're still with me at this point, hit that subscribe button. Because what happened in that chair is worth understanding. Bruce Lee sat down across from a woman holding a knife in his own living room, and he gave her exactly what she had asked for. He listened. She told him about the Thursday sessions. The way he had pushed her past the place where she thought her body could go. The way he'd said once, after a long drill, "You're stronger than you think." 3 words. She had written them down that night. She still had the piece of paper. She told him about the letters she'd sent. None of them answered. About driving past his studio 3 times in 1 week. And then, finally, she told him the truth about the folders. She didn't have any letters from him. No recordings. She had nothing. The whole threat had been invented. A desperate move to make herself seem more dangerous than she was. Bruce nodded. He didn't interrupt. Didn't defend himself. Didn't explain or justify. He just listened, the way you listen when you understand that listening is the only thing that's going to work. When she finished, there was a long silence. "You going to put that down now?" he said. She looked at the knife. Then she set it on the coffee table. Carefully, like she was placing something valuable on a shelf. She sat back down on the sofa. "I'm sorry," she said. "I didn't come here to do this." "I know," Bruce said. He leaned forward, arms on his knees, and looked at her directly. "What you're feeling right now is real. I won't tell you it isn't. You worked hard. You showed up every week. That's not nothing." He paused. "But this, what you've done today, this is not something I can fix for you. And you already know that." She nodded. She was crying now, quietly, without drama. "I knew it before I got in the car," she said. "Yeah," he said. "We usually do." The police came 40 minutes later. That part Bruce insisted on. He went upstairs, found Linda and Rosa and Brandon all in Brandon's room, and told Linda what had happened. She listened without interrupting. When he finished, she said, "Call them." Not a question. 2 officers arrived, took a report, and sat with the woman in the living room while she explained herself. She didn't minimize it. She told them about the knife. She told them she had entered without permission, refused to leave, made threats. By the time she was done, she looked lighter. Like saying it plainly, without the story around it, had removed some weight. They asked Bruce and Linda if they wanted to press charges. Bruce looked at Linda. Linda looked at the woman. "No," Linda said. "Not today." The woman looked up when she heard that. She met Linda's eyes. There was a moment where nothing passed between them except recognition. Two people who had loved the same man in completely different ways, both of whom now understood exactly where they stood. The officers left. The door closed. Bruce stood in the middle of his living room. The afternoon light was coming in low. The folders were still on the coffee table. He picked them up. The first one had photographs. Old ones from lessons at the school. Students drilling. Bruce demonstrating technique. Nothing remarkable. The second folder was empty. She had been bluffing from start to finish. No letters. No recordings. Nothing. She had walked into this house carrying desperation and a knife she probably hadn't decided to bring until the last minute. He set both folders down. Rosa appeared in the doorway, watching him the way people watch when they're waiting to be told they did the right thing. "You did the right thing," he said. "Calling me. That was exactly right." She let out a breath she'd held for hours. "I should have called sooner. When she first came to the door." "Yes," Bruce said simply. "But you called." Linda came downstairs with Brandon on her hip. The boy had slept through the entire thing. He reached for Bruce with both arms, and Bruce took him. He held his son against his chest and felt the boy's weight. Real. Warm. Uncomplicated. Brandon was already reaching for Bruce's collar, already interested in something small and ordinary. Bruce looked at Linda over the top of Brandon's head. There was a lot that could have been said. About the woman. About what she had claimed. About the cost of the kind of intensity Bruce brought to everything he did, the way it drew people in and sometimes didn't let them go cleanly. About all of it. None of that was said. What Linda said instead was, "Are you hungry?" And Bruce said, "Starving." And they went into the kitchen. The next morning was ordinary. That was the first thing. Brandon was up at 6:30. Rosa arrived at 8. Coffee was made. The day arranged itself around its routines with no interest in the drama of the afternoon before. This is how it goes. The extraordinary thing happens, and then the ordinary thing resumes, and you have to decide what the extraordinary thing means inside a life that is mostly not extraordinary. Bruce thought about her for a long time afterward, not about what she had done. That part he understood clearly enough. People in pain reach for whatever they can reach for. She had reached too far and she knew it. He hoped she got some help. What he thought about was the moment in the chair. He had trained his whole life to be fast, precise, to be the most dangerous thing in any room he walked into. And then life handed him a situation where every single one of those skills was exactly the wrong tool. What he'd had to do instead was slow down, get quiet, make space, hold still in a way that wasn't passive, because passivity would have made her more afraid, and fear was the thing driving the knife. This was a different kind of stillness, an active one, the kind that says, "I'm here. I see you. This doesn't have to go any further." He wrote about this kind of thing, not for publication, just for himself in the notebooks he kept. His private philosophy, worked out across hundreds of handwritten pages. The idea that the highest expression of any skill was knowing when not to use it. That the real master didn't need to demonstrate anything, because the real master had nothing to prove. He had believed that intellectually for years. That Tuesday afternoon, he found out what it felt like to actually live it. There's a story. You may have heard versions of it. An interviewer once asked Bruce Lee what he would do if someone attacked him on the street. Bruce thought about it. Then he said, "Talk to him." The interviewer laughed. Bruce didn't. "Strength without wisdom is just violence," he said. "And I already have enough violence. What I'm always looking for is the other thing." He never named the other thing directly, but the people who knew him best had their own names for it. Restraint, presence, the willingness to sit with difficulty instead of fighting your way out of it. Linda, for her part, went back to being Linda, which meant fully present, calmly formidable, and not particularly interested in discussing it at length. She told Bruce privately, that night, that she hadn't been afraid for herself. She had been afraid for Rosa. Rosa, who had made one small ordinary mistake and then had to live with the consequences for hours, standing in the kitchen, unable to act. Linda had watched Rosa the entire time, carrying two separate sets of concern at once, managing both without making any noise about it. That's the detail that doesn't make the legend. Rosa gave her notice 3 months later. Not because of what had happened. She was going back to her family. Life pulling in another direction. Bruce and Linda threw her a small going-away dinner. Brandon cried briefly and then got distracted by cake. That evening, after the officers had left and Brandon was in bed and the folders were in the trash and the house was finally quiet, Bruce Lee walked to the front door and closed it. Locked it. Set the chain. He stood there for a moment, hand on the wood, listening to the street outside. Cars. A neighbor's radio. A dog somewhere down the block. Ordinary Tuesday evening sounds. He had walked through this door hours before not knowing what he would find. He had found something unexpected. Not a fight. An invitation to be better than fighting. And he had taken it. He turned off the porch light. The man who locked that door was not the man the posters would later show. Frozen mid-kick. Expression fierce. All motion and certainty. That man was real, but he was only part of it. The man who locked that door had come home because a frightened woman asked him to. Had walked into danger without armor. Had sat down in a chair across from a knife and listened. There are a lot of stories told about Bruce Lee. Most of them are about speed. About power. About the things his body could do that other bodies couldn't imagine. Those stories are worth telling. Every one of them is true. He was extraordinary in ways still being studied and argued about today. But the people who were in the room when the cameras were off will tell you something else. They will tell you about his patience. The way he listened when listening was what was needed. The fact that he never confused strength with cruelty. Never confused softness with weakness. He could have ended that situation in under 3 seconds. Everyone in the room knew it. The woman on the sofa knew it. That was partly why she was crying. She had arrived prepared for a confrontation and found something she had no defense against. A man who simply refused to fight. He went into the kitchen, made tea, sat down across from Linda at the table they had bought together years ago, back when they had very little money and a very clear idea of what they were building. He drank his tea. The door was closed. The chain was on. Everyone inside was safe. That was Tuesday.